Hello everyone, I am Peter. Together with my colleagues we prepared a presentation where we demonstrate the power of decoupling techniques illustrated on ground vibration testing of an aircraft. So in system identification we are interested in identifying the unknown system given input-output measurements, and in our particular case we start with a Siemens software and hardware. We generate our signals. We have the aircraft as system. This is an F-16 airfighter, and we use these all available signals to build model. And this process consists of 5 steps, and this is also the outline of my presentation. So the first step is the experiment design. Here we used TestLab from Siemens and our toolbox SEMI. I will explain later what SEMI is. Then the next step is to post-process the measurement. This is the classical non-parametric analysis via best linear approximation framework. Then here we get a non-parametric FRF. The next step is to build a parametric FRF in state space format. And here I use also the combination of SEMI and PNLSS toolboxes. Again, I will explain what PNLSS is. Then the next step is to build the first nonlinear model with lots of parameters. And the last step is to reduce the number of parameters and to improve the results. Here I use the combination of SEMI and FCPD toolboxes. And as you can see, these toolboxes are products of our department. They work together very fine. In this slide, I have compressed the first 2 points, the experiment design and the non-parametric post-processing. So we talk about nonlinear system identification. This means that our underlying system is nonlinear, and according to our experience, the first and best signal what we should try out is a so-called multisign, also known as a pseudo-random noise. And what you can see here in this figure is a frequency response function estimate of a nonlinear system, and this looks kind of noisy despite the fact that we used averaging and transient free data. And what we do with our techniques, that we take this noisy like function, we estimated a Smoothen transfer function called best linear approximation, and in addition to that we provide extra information about the nonlinear distortions and the noise. And based on this, for instance, our user can decide if for this particular system a nonlinear model is needed, or we can go with a classical linear model. In this work, we will use our toolbox to obtain the elements of this best linear approximation framework. This toolbox is called SEMI. SEMI stands for Simplified Analysis for Multiple Input System. And this toolbox is the outcome of one of our industrial research projects together with Siemens Industry Software. And here you can see a screenshot of this toolbox. The first thing to notice that it's a MATLAB toolbox, and the user has 2 possibilities, either to use this graphical user interface or command line interface. And this is a complete toolbox. This means that everything starts from the experiment design and till post-processing the measurements. And you can do experiments, for instance, in TestLab and use it directly, or if you have any other software environment, you can just convert the data to MATLAB format and you can use it directly. And what is novel here, that it's semi-automatic. Normally you have tens of parameters to be set, transient analysis, correlation analysis, and so forth. Here everything is automatically done, and the user gets warnings if something is not correct. So we will use this toolbox to process the measurement. In this slide, you can see the actual F-16 ground vibration testing measurements. So we have two shakers under the left and right wing. We have a lot of accelerometers. We have a payload, a missile, and the dominant source of nonlinearities comes from this connection interface between the missile and the wingtip. The next slide shows the import screen of this measurement. Few channels can be seen here. We had together more than 200 channels. In order to simplify, I selected only the driving points, so where we apply the excitation. Then here, these are the automatically processed parameters, the length of the measurement, number of periods, and number of independent realizations. So this is 7, and we use these 7 realizations to build models, to test the models, and to independently validate the models. Okay, once we hit the import button, we will see a figure like this. These are the FRFs at the driving point between the right, left, right, and left wings. The thick lines are the FRFs. The thin lines are here, the noise levels, and the red shades are the nonlinearity levels at low and high excitation. So the darker the shade, the higher the excitation. And what you can observe immediately, that the higher the excitation, the lower the resonance frequency. And also sometimes we have kind of weird changes. If we look at the nonlinear distortions from the block, we can see indeed that these measurements were highly nonlinear. And if we use our multisigns, we can tell also more about the nonlinearities. So this is the output tab of the toolbox. This is at low level excitation, the output spectrum. And next to the noise, here you can see even and odd nonlinear contributions. And it's nothing surprising. If you look at here, you can see that the orange lines are the dominating error source, and these are responsible for changing of resonance frequencies. And the next step is to build a PNLSS model. The PNLSS stands for Polynomial Nonlinear State Space. This is a free to try out toolbox. And in short, we have the classical linear state space model part plus the nonlinear part where we have polynomials in X and U. I will show an example. The first step is that we have to initialize ABCD matrices based on the previous best linear approximation FRFs. Then we activate these polynomials, for instance, x times u, x squared, u squared, and so forth. And we do an optimization process in order to obtain the best results. Here the problem is that the number of terms here can be extremely high. This means that we have to use a lot of memory, we need a lot of time, and it's difficult to understand thousands of parameters. And the idea that we will use decoupling based on this very complex model in order to reduce the necessary complexity and to understand better the model. Okay, let's continue with the actual process. So the first step is to build a linear non-parametric model. This you can see here. To make it simple, you will see here only the low-level excitation. And we go towards parametric state space models. The first case is what is in our paper, that we use 8 GB RAM, a model order scanning between 1 and 12 states, and we found that 11 is the best solution. Then if you have more memory, for instance 16 GB RAM, then we can go higher with this model order, and we found out that the best model order was 18. This is something new, what is not in our paper yet. And here I would like to note that this memory need is not due to the linear part, but the nonlinear part, these cross terms. Okay, this causes a lot of troubles with the memory. So here we could see some fitting results, and now I'm going to do some benchmarking. Here you can see the followings. In blue, we have the measured value on high level. So we trained these models on low level, and I zoom in for the data record just to have a better understanding. And in red, we have the model signal. First, we have the non-parametric fit. Then we have the 11 states and 18 states scenario. Here in this table, you can see the relative root mean square error and the number of parameters. So this is a simple FRF. As you can see, sometimes we predict the values good, sometimes it's not that good. The average error is above 100% and we use 420 parameters. Then we can use the state space representation. The fit looks already better. And what we see that the fitting error is now 77% around. And here we used 169 parameters for the 11 cases, and for the 18 states, we used 400 parameters. In all cases, we needed less than 100 megabyte and 1 minute to estimate these models. So the next step is to build these PNLSS polynomial state space models. And I take out these two state space models as basis, so the 11 and the 18 states. And here you can see the results and observe that the match between the estimated and measured signal is quite, very close. Graphically, it looks very good. The relative RMS error dropped also to 28 and 26%. However, there is a heavy price what we will have to pay. So again, PNLSS, we have the state space part. This was the previous slide. And here to simplify, I use only this E matrix. These cross terms with order of 2 and 3. In the first case for the 11 states, we can see the total number of parameters is now 7,267. This means that we indeed have to use a lot of memory and a lot of computational time. And in the 18 states case, what you can see that we have more than 35,000 parameters, which means double memory. So 16 gigabytes and 1 day of computation. So it's a really high price, but we have a very nice fit. So the final step will be to illustrate the power of the decoupling technique. And to do so, I will take this scenario with the 35,000 parameters, and I will apply the decoupling technique. So the first diagram here shows the relative errors as a function of number of branches. The second graph shows the number of parameters as a function of number of branches. Let's start with this error graph. So here we can read the relative RMS error. In the black thin line, we see the parametric error. Then we had the nonlinear model here in the thin line. And these blue crosses represent the decoupled model error. And it's a little bit bizarre because what we see, for instance, we take out these 10 branches, then we see that the error is almost triple as the error of the PNLSS. Okay, let's understand what is going on. So look at these parameters, and what you can see here again that we have, it's a scale in logarithmic. Here we have the total number of parameters in the PNLSS model, so it's 35,000. Then here we have the linear model, parametric, the 400. And as you can see, the number of the actual parameters is very low. So this decoupling technique indeed works. We have much less parameters. Even in the highest case, we stay below 1,000. Since there is a huge difference between these original 35,000 parameters and the new parameters below 1,000, it's possible to use post-optimization of these model parameters. And this you can see in the red crosses. So this is the post-optimized model for different branches. And as you can see, that this works very good. So the new model error is better than the older one. And we don't pay the price of the heavy computing. So for instance, to calculate one branch, usually we need around 1 hour of computation. But there is only one drawback. Since we're talking here about optimization, something can go wrong. and it's not guaranteed that we will have always a stable model. For instance, here, the number 5 branch is missing because it got unstable. Okay, let's conclude the results. We started with non-parametric Bloom model with very high level. Then we went to state space representation, polynomial state space representation, and we use this to achieve a decoupled model. Here I illustrate 2 branches, and you can see that this model is very good. To sum up, the first results are very promising. As far as I know, it's the first time when successfully we could build a PNLSS model for F16 measurement. This is a high complexity measurement. In the system identification article, we talk about the 11 state space cases, and in our journal paper to come, we will explain more different scenarios. Thank you very much for your attention.